be more open-minded. It doesn't mean have no standards. Be more open-minded that other people who may not initially fit what you're looking for might actually be a good fit for you.
Welcome back to Dating Intentionally. I'm Talia. I'm a dating coach, and I'm sharing no-nonsense advice for navigating modern dating with confidence and ease, whether you've been on dozens of dates or you're just getting started. I believe dating can be fun, especially when we can tap into an abundance mindset. So I'm going to get right into it. If you're here on YouTube, hello, welcome. Today's guest is also named Talia, which is so cool. Love meeting other Talias in the world. Talia Bombola is a licensed psychotherapist and confidence assertiveness specialist. She's also a relationship mentor for women. Her work centers around helping anxious women feel secure by increasing their self-worth, confidence, and assertiveness. She teaches women how to rewire beliefs about themselves, men, and relationships, and helps heal that feeling of being not enough. I love this conversation with Talia all about confidence, assertiveness, and tapping into abundance. So let's get right into it. Hello, Talia. Welcome to the Dating Intentionally podcast. Thank you so much for being here. I love having another Talia on. This is so cool.
We were just talking about that off air. It's cool to meet another one with our name. So thank you.
I know. And in this field,
I know. That is a small world, actually. Yeah.
Really, it is. When I first saw your account, I was like, who is this Talia person?
Imposter Talia.
No, I love your content. So, okay, the first question I have for you, this comes from Hinge. Okay, I love doing the Hinge prompts. And this is, never have I ever.
Oh, that's, wow. I've done a lot. You're really hitting the big ones.
I know. I was like,
do you want it dating related?
It doesn't, anything. It could be dating or not.
I used to have a list in my notes app because I was so bad at this game. There was like 3 things I could ever say. I've never been arrested. That's one thing. I never snuck out of my house growing up. That's another thing. Those are the things I can think of like off the
So
cuff.
You're a good person. No,
You what? Those things couldn't have happened. I just flew under the radar.
Oh man, that's funny. I mean, I don't remember sneaking out of my house, and I've never been arrested. Yeah. I mean, yeah, those are good ones. I feel like if you were in a group of people, you might get one finger down for that. Also, for a dating app, those would be hilarious to put on a dating app. Like if you chose those two.
Because what if somebody messaged in? They're like, "Really? I've been incarcerated 6 times." I'm like, immediate swipe left. Like,
yeah, maybe it's yeah. Well, they say like if you put something in your dating app profile that you don't want, you're probably going to get more of that coming at you. So maybe not. Yeah. Maybe not that one for the prompts.
Probably not. Maybe skydiving. I've never been skydiving, so that would be a safe one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Would you do that? Would you do it?
No, I think if I were like 18, maybe. But I'm old, much older now, and my frontal lobe is developed, and I have a kid. So anything risky for me is like, is this worth dying over? No. So
yeah, fair. I did bungee jumping when I was 18. I don't know if I would do it again, like just for the sake of my like ovaries.
Right? Yeah. It's only so good for a while. Then health wise, you're like, oh, this is just, I have my joint.
Yeah, I don't want to shake things up too much.
Yeah.
So, okay, I want to jump right in here. I'm curious. I follow you on Instagram, and for anyone who's not following you, you are, what's your handle?
Talia Bombola. First.
Okay. Yeah. That's what I thought. I didn't want to say it wrong. Yeah. At Talia Bombola. We'll link it in the show notes. But I'm curious, what made you want to become a therapist?
Great question. I would say for most therapists, what drew me to the field was my own experience in therapy. But what made me have my own experience in therapy was growing up in like on the surface, moderately functional home. And like, don't get me wrong, there's obviously going to be people listening to this who know my family. We're like cohesive, but there was a lot of like lack of emotional regulation or lack of, like external communication. A lot of things were assumed that like, it was like you're almost like a baby therapist in your family before you become like a real therapist. And then I had a lot of I talked to you off air about this growing up in the school I did. It was really cliquey, even from like 2nd or 3rd grade. So like just knew ahead in middle school, and I saw a therapist then. That was when my own personal journey started. And that's when I was like, oh, like I can do this for a living. Like I knew what the value and power was of sitting across from somebody in that office of like, even if that hour or 2 a week at that point was like the only one I wanted.
Wait, so how old were you in these first experiences?
13. when I first started.
We had opposite experiences. I also had to go to, like, I had to go to therapy when I was in middle school. I was not the best student and I was getting in trouble.
Yeah.
And I literally sat in my therapist, like, ignoring her the entire thing, like not saying a word. And I was just a spiteful, like, preteen.
I'm not do this. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think for the people, even like years now later, I've worked with teenagers, the ones who don't want to come in and don't understand why or the benefit, why would you respond any other way? Like, that's the healthy way to respond how you did. It's, for me, I was like, I'm in so much pain. Like, I need help with this. So I think I was so grateful to talk to like an adult who had emotional regulation skills and was confident, like, which I didn't feel like my parents were at the time, that like I learned so much from her that I wanted to do that for other people.
That is so cool. That is just, I mean, like, I bet if that therapist you work with at that age knew that now, like, she'd be so happy, or they'd be so happy. Yeah.
Actually, I ran into her the other day because I just moved offices, but she has an office in my old office. So I've kept seeing her all these years later. And she's like, I become a therapist and a mom. It's been the coolest thing. Like, it really came full circle. Yeah. So
that is so cool.
Yeah.
I love that. I've thought about it. I've thought about, like, should I go back to school? Should I do this? But I'm not sure it's for me. I mean,
off the fence in the field of it is for sure for me because it's a long process.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that answer so much. Like that is just so inspiring. And I guess my other question, like, because you focus a lot on confidence, why is confidence the one thing that, or one of the few things that you really focus on in your work?
I would say it was probably the core of, like, inadvertently the core of why I got bullied when I was in middle school or even younger, because I feel like I had that innate sense about me. And for anybody who's like a fan of the Enneagram personality test, I'm an 8, which is like the leader challenger. And that's been my spirit and my personality since I was young. I always like went against and had questions and was like, I'll do it my way. And I think at a certain point that became something that got in the way of me being friends with people. So I feel like it was like a Dementor in Harry Potter. They like sucked my confidence away from me. And I was also going through a lot of hormonal changes at the time. Middle school is very tough on your body image. And it was just the perfect storm that it got taken away. And then I had to work for so many years to get it back that I know what it's like to not have it. And I know what it's like to have it taken away and have to work back for it. That was the easiest to me, like no brainer specialization because of my personal relationship with it and how I do think our personal relationships with what we're passionate about guide our work if we choose to go into a specialty. So for me, choosing confidence was the most aligned fit because my personal story also lends to a lot of empathy and sympathy for the clients I have who are going through of like, wait, you mean I can do that? I'm like 100%. And I also add in the personality traits, and different personality traits can help you either feel like you can have confidence or kind of knock you down at your own needs of like, I don't know if I should. And that's the trait of agreeableness. Do you go with the flow and make everybody happy? And are you very nice? Or do you say what needs to be said in a kind way, even if it might not land or the other person might not want to hear it? I'm not a very agreeable person. Like on the traits, I think I'm like 30%. So I'm way more disagreeable than I am agreeable. And I feel like, I don't know if you ever read the kid's book, Rainbow Fish, where he has all these shiny scales and he has to give them away. So I feel like I'm kind of like the rainbow fish of confidence where I'm like, take the scales. I don't need all of this. Like, let me help you. You set the boundaries, be kind, be direct. And they're like, I feel so much better. I'm like, yeah, because you're not living a lie where you're just trying to please everyone. If you try to please everyone, you're not going to make anyone happy, including yourself. So
I feel like, first of all, you need to make a remix of the book Rainbow Fish of Confidence. Secondly, I'm an Enneagram 8, like 7, 8, so I relate to that as well. And I think that's really interesting, like, how you are leveraging your personal experiences, obviously the empathy you have for your clients. And I also can see where the assertiveness comes in too, like we were just saying about being able to communicate in a nice way or like just in a
direct way,
not like snarky, mean, sarcastic, passive aggressive, like, you know,
to unlearn that. Don't get me wrong, it's still up here.
No one teaches us how to, like, we're not born knowing how to do this. We have to learn. And I think everyone listening, like, these are skills that are attainable. And it's like no one just has them. It's like they're either modeled for us, and a lot of us don't have it modeled, or you have to work with a therapist or specialist, or like read the books, do whatever you want, but it's a skill. I'm so happy you're on because I'm a very confident person, and I also went through a lot in my life, but I never really. I know this sucks to hear. Like, I hate saying this out loud, but I don't really have a ton of like dips in my confidence. I guess my question was, like, what do you think of the fake it till you make it type of approach?
So I think that fake it till you make it has its place. It also mimics the therapy skill that we teach called act as if. So if there's a version of yourself or we call it identification in psychoanalysis that like what you have modeled for you growing up, you often identify with. So let's say your parents were incredibly religious growing up. That could go one of both ways. You also adhere to that, or you decide to like defect away from it. But let's say a parent, God forbid, passes away. All of a sudden you find yourself going to church or temple or place of worship because you're trying to like re-identify with that parent. So when you're looking at the skill of fake it till you make it or acting as if, who do you admire in your life? What do you admire about them? And how do you think you could embody that skill? Secure attachment is the one I work with my clients all the time, both in therapy and in coaching. How do I have it? These people seem to have it so easy. Sometimes people genuinely are securely attached and that's why. And sometimes people are lying to themselves and they shove down all their uncomfortable feelings. So it looks like it's easy on the surface, but they're acting like it's easy. It doesn't mean it genuinely is.
I think I'm both. I think I wouldn't call it shoving down, but I'm more of a, like, if I'm scared of something, that means I probably have to do it. And I do it feeling fear. It's just, and it's like, yeah. I think confidence is such an interesting topic because it really does. It's just like, it's all about self-trust and just like, and having, I think maybe for me, I just had a bunch of early experience in my life that like made me trust myself. And that's carried through my life. And I don't know, like I just locked down and you know what? Also, who's to say my confidence won't be knocked out of me one day, right? Like it's not something that just like, it could come and go. And I also was going to say earlier, like, I think we can normalize having seasons of our life where we're not feeling confident and then it comes back. Just because you don't feel confident right now in this moment doesn't mean you never will. And like I think it's like it's okay if you're not confident all the time.
And it's a good starting place. Like I like to define really true confidence as even if you have no clue what you're doing, you can be open about that and be okay with it and not try to.
Oh my gosh. Yes. That hits so hard. That hits so hard for me, right?
Genuine. So many people have asked me questions, especially as a professor. They'll like ask me, I'm like, no clue. They're like, what? And they're like, but you have all this. I'm like, I'm a person. Like I wasn't born. And they're like, it's a therapist. Like I learned too. Like I don't know everything. I know a lot, but about I went on a date once years ago with this guy. God, that took me back. And he was like listening to me talk and he was like not in my field at all. And he's like, I feel like you know this much about this much. And it was like the second date. And I'm like, that's like probably a layman's way to say like you're an expert in one area of the field, but it always stuck with me that he said it that way because he was thinking this like this astute observation. And I'm like, sure, dude. Yes. I mean, it is true though. Like you have expertise in one field. Right. It doesn't know everything. I just know a lot about this thing I happen to know a lot about.
Right. So something that comes up a lot in my community is just confidence in dating, like all of these experiences of rejection or just not finding people or just people not matching back on the apps. It just takes a hit to it just chips away. But do you think that feeling confident is harder these days because of social media?
Yes. I also think it's more difficult because the dating world has been gamified to apps. I think apps are great. I've met a lot of great people that I've dated on apps as well. Some have had very long relationships with. I think the majority of the mindset where the lack of confidence is coming in is that we weren't given the skills to feel confident and trust in ourselves or really confidence is like that firm belief something is true and like knowing that self-truth mixed with this internet age where we're all seeking external validation, which is one hell of a drug. It's like the worst drug I've ever done in my history of all the partying I've done. That was the worst one I ever tried because it keeps you coming back for do other people think I'm good enough? And dating on the apps when you know inherently you have worth, value, and you are good enough as you are. You're not trying to prove it when you're on the apps. You're trying to find a partner who will see you the way you see yourself in a positive way. Changes the mindset where you don't have to look for it for external validation or they didn't match back. Something's wrong with me. How many times have you not matched back because you like were at lunch or you were busy? Like, but we don't extend the same grace to other people. We're like, if they do something for this reason, they're wrong. But if I do it, I'm right. Like it's an unfair bias.
It's so true.
So social media does make us not as confident or not as desirous of being on the apps because it knocks our sense of self and it creates a lot of attachment problems that otherwise wouldn't have existed years ago. you either had to wait by the phone, like the He's Just Not That Into You movie portrays that perfectly, where she's just like waiting for the voicemail, like making sure the phone's plugged in.
Oh
He's
my
like,
gosh.
well, he would call, like he didn't. And the guy, Justin Long, the bartender, like had to set her straight of like, he's not that into you. If he's not calling, he's not into you. We don't have it as cut and dry now because people will match, they'll fall off, they'll message, cancel the day of. Like it's too wishy-washy. It's also about the age range you're dating in too. If you're in your 20s to early 30s, wishy-washy is kind of the name of the game. It's more rare to find someone serious. The older you get, definitely there's still like,
I mean, yeah, there's still plenty of unserious like 50-year-olds and more and older.
But there's also people out there who are like, I'm widowed. I want to find a new person, or I have this going on for me and I like a partner in this. Like there's different, there's wishy-washy at any age, but I think the older you get, the more intentional, hopefully the pool you are in is going to be.
I mean, it's like, I think there are serious people in every pool. Yes, maybe there's more in like the 30s, 40s, late 20s, like range. But yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah, we'll get into this a little bit more when we talk about abundance, but I do want to know, like, I've worked with a lot of amazing people who are really competent and confident in many areas of their life. But when it comes to dating, they feel the opposite. So what would you say to someone like that?
That's mainly the women I work with in dating coaching. They're like 6-figure, 7-figure business owners, CEOs. They have everything except someone to share it with, is how I message it for the marketing. And they want someone to share it with, but the way that they are going after it in their business life or their friendships, those pursuits, it's not the same way you go after it in love. It's not like, well, I scheduled this meeting and he no-showed here. And I'm like, do you realize you're talking about this like it's like a law firm? Like, I understand the value of like, cutting some out of like, this isn't a good fit. But if the person feels like you have no time for them, or you're not receptive, especially as a woman, if you're not receptive to what they want to give to you, and you message them of like, we're meeting at 7, I have drinks and I have this and I'm going to Pilates, but like, there's no room for receptivity or play, which are two traits that are in heteronormative relationships, very important for a man. And they want to feel that way with you. So it's knowing how you come across in the other areas of your life where you're very successful. Do like an inventory with yourself. What are those traits? Ask other people, like what traits do you see that you think make me successful at whatever, work, friends, my hobbies? Get a poll going and then ask them, if you're willing to hear the truth, what are some of the traits you think that make me not as successful in dating, or that might hinder my success in dating, and wording it that way, because they might be like, well, you're really intense at work, which is great, but maybe your intensity is taking up too much space on the date, or you don't have any time in your schedule, or you don't have the warmth, or because really they're using the overworking as a guardedness to prevent somebody from really getting close to them. It's like, well, nobody's ever going to be good enough for me or at my level. Is lonely at the top. Like, don't you ever want to come back down to earth and like be around other mortal creatures?
Yeah.
Date someone someday.
I've definitely worked with people who have that, like, I'm so successful, I've built this incredible life, which is amazing. But then it's like, they feel like no one's ever good enough. And it's an interesting thing to have to reframe.
They don't feel good enough. That's why they garnished all that success, so nobody could ever tell them they're not good enough. So deep down, they're like either projecting it out on the other person, or if they are successful in getting a short-term relationship, they're what's called like introjecting it into that person and highlighting all the ways that person may or may not actually be good enough. And the other person's like, well, I don't want to be around somebody who makes me, I was fine before I met you. Like, I felt like I was good enough. Now I don't, because I'm
interesting, right?
And that's not like, playful competition is different in dating than like, I feel like I have to catch up to your enoughness. That relationship's not going to work.
So basically, like, your advice is that some of the skills and things that got you far in your work and other areas of life just may not translate to dating. And I agree. I mean, I think, tapping into a different energy. And I personally don't love the feminine masculine like energy verbiage. And I have a whole podcast about why I don't like it. But like, I do believe in tapping into different aspects of your personality, like it's like when you hang out with one group of friends, it's like you're kind of, you have your going out friends and you're like, stay in and watch a movie friends, it's like different parts of you. Yeah. So confidence is like something I think a lot of people want in a partner. Why do you think it's such a turn on in dating? What does it do for us in terms of like why we find it so attractive?
Do you want me to go like really deep and analytical with this? Because I can. Okay. So my belief in all the years I've studied this and done this is that confidence for women, if the man is confident, gives a sense of safety and security. Like, I've got this under control. I'll protect you, not like a leader in a creepy, like, power dynamic way, but like, I can take the lead so you don't have to, for especially the women who are, I don't like the terms as much either, but like the women who are in their masculine all day at work, they don't want to have to then be in their masculine for dating. Same thing for men who are in their masculine all day. They want to be taken care of. Like, we all have the desire to work and to be driven, and we all have the desire to be taken care of. And it hits heads when we're wanting the same thing at the same time. So if I'm a woman and I'm straight and I want to date a man who's confident, it also gives me not only a sense of safety and security, it reminds me of times I felt contained when I was growing up with my childhood home, where I felt like my parents said they were going to pick me up on time and they did. Like, a lot of our feelings in adulthood do stem from childhood. Or in the converse, maybe you didn't feel that a lot growing up. You didn't have parents who were stick-to-itiveness or anything like that. And so now dating somebody in adulthood, you want them to have the traits that your parents didn't have. Or you want them to have the traits your parents did have. Usually, though, we're kind of asleep to this and we don't really focus on that until you go into therapy and you're like, oh my gosh, everybody I've dated reminds me of my mom and or dad. That's my favorite work to do. And I'm like, and you want to know why? And I give them all these assessments and they're just like,
oh God.
But now the real work can begin. Now that you know this is the thing that the unconscious does, we can actually get somewhere.
Yes.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Thank you for going deep. I mean, I feel like I have to really chew on that one. For me, I guess I've always interpreted the desire or attraction towards people who are confident because it gives us more room in the dynamic and the relationship to like breathe and just like, oh, this person, they got it. Like, they're fine. Like, I can be okay too. But it's like, if when someone's coming in kind of more insecure, like needing a lot of validation and reassurance from the jump, like from like first date, it's like, I don't feel like I can be comfortable because I can tell they're uncomfortable.
You also probably feel like their therapist. If the example is that you're dating somebody or trying to date somebody and they're so insecure, it's a lot of emotional labor to try to secure not only oneself, but
right.
To try to
yeah. That reminds me of a guy I dated who was so sweet, so nice, but he kept putting himself down. And I'm just like, I don't mind supporting people and like being a hype girl. I am a hype girl naturally, but it's that was just a lot of effort that I didn't want to put in.
Yeah. And I ironically, a lot of the people who are confident and indeed, accurately portray that either out in the world, getting matched on dates or online dating, it's like this almost magnetism for the people who are not as confident to be like, I want to be near that because I want some of what they have. I just don't know how to go about it. Yeah. So friendships are a great example where we could have insecurities in some areas and securities in others and kind of give and take freely and share our tips and tricks. I'm working on that with my clients, but a lot of clients and people haven't yet mastered that in their dating life of how to say like, wow, you're really good at whatever. Let's say you go to a restaurant in a different language. Like, you're so good at Italian. Can you teach me some words? Is a much better and not self-deprecating way than like, I'm such stupid. I never learned another language. Like,
oh yeah.
The same result by wording it confidently. That's what I said. Like, confidence is even if you have no clue what you're doing, that you can be vocal about it and own it. That's sexy. That's an attractive quality about a person because, you know, they're self-contained. And if you want to give to them or help them or validate them, it's out of love. It's not out of necessity for the love to survive.
I love this so much because there's so many people that come to me in my DMs that are like, I'm not good at money. And I'm like, they have like some area where they're not confident in, and it's like, they feel like it's going to affect their dating life a lot, but it's like all how you frame it. And it's like, no, you just have some stuff to learn. It's not that you're bad at it. Like,
you're currently not as skilled as you'd like to be at it.
Yeah. And I love that so much.
Yeah.
So if there is one thing, like, how can we start working on confidence? Where does the work actually begin, whether you're working with a therapist or not?
So I would say the work begins by doing a self-inventory, therapy or not therapy, and writing down areas of your life where you yourself claim to yourself, I'm not confident in this area, or I'm not good at, right? Sometimes people have an easier time with starting like, what are you not good at? You can also ask, what are you good at? And usually the people with confidence struggles are like, and then I'm like, what are you not good at? They're like, oh, let me count the ways, right? They have this like whole list of what they're bad at or what they think they're not good enough for. So start with that and then I have people write a neutral then positive. So neutral statement, like we were talking about, I'm bad at money. I have more to learn about money. I will eventually be good at money. I am skilled with money, right? Like you have
Oh my God, that's so useful.
negative to neutral to positive, because negative just to positive, your brain's gonna be like, this is BS.
Yeah, right.
Like, why are you lying to us? It's past act as if. It like doesn't even register. You're like, why are you lying? Like, who are you talking about? We're not this person. You have to get it to neutral before you can get it to positive. And sometimes people sit at my office, especially, sit in that neutrality for months. I'm not saying it will take months, but if you've never, quote, felt confident at something, we can't just expect by a few mantras in 1 week, all of a sudden you're cured. Not that it's anything to cure, but people feel like this, well, I should be ready by now or done by now. And I'm like, oh, the work is just beginning. Like, we barely scratched the surface of your childhood. Like,
yeah.
And go back to childhood. Was there a time where an adult or trusted figure gave you grief or said you weren't good enough at what's on your list? And going backward in time, again, if it's really deep trauma, I would definitely recommend doing that with a therapist. But most of the time we can take ourselves back of like, oh yeah, it was that talent show and that one girl's mom was talking about me behind my back and I never doubted myself until I overheard. It's because of trust, right? If a trusted adult says something about ourselves and we don't have a strong constitution yet, we're more likely to believe it if we trust them. Not just any adult. If it was like an adult of a kid who bullied us, I'd be like, well, I don't like your kid anyway. I'm not going to take it as true. So it's if a trusted adult we looked up to said something and told us about ourselves and we internalized it and believed it, you have to go back and examine those in adulthood if they're not serving you anymore.
Wow. I mean, that's so powerful. And the whole journey from negative, neutral to positive, that I talked about this with a specialist who works with eating disorders and stuff. Her name is Leah Kern. She said the same thing about body positivity and body acceptance. It's like, you can't go from hating your body to loving your body. You have to like find the neutral of like my arms function. Like I have all 10 toes, just like these just things that are just neutral. That's so powerful. So, okay. I'm really curious. How is confidence linked to assertiveness? What is the relationship there?
So my link is when you're able to have that self-trust like you and I have talked about today, and that the trust and belief of, is something true? Not only is it true in general, but like, is it true for me? And answering that question, and that can help people go inside of, is it true for me that I'm bad at dating? And then people think like, well, sometimes, okay, so what would I need to do to have whatever, a more accurate truth, a higher or best truth? It is true for me that I want to be better at dating. So that's where I think the assertiveness piece comes in, is that you can start to make assertions or be more assertive in your life in the areas that you want to grow in. And that's where learning more interpersonal effectiveness skills comes into play, with being okay being assertive, because it means internalizing the message. Some people are not going to like me and I will survive. And some people aren't going to like not how I'm saying what I have to say, but some people aren't going to like what I have to say because it means less access. It means we're not going to keep dating. It means I don't have time for them. And that's the key, is being assertive, is I'm going to speak up for myself, and I have the confidence to speak up for myself, and that I will be okay afterwards. And this other person will be okay, but that's not my responsibility to go in and emotionally caretake for them.
Always say like, I know this sucks for your ego, but they're going to get over it. Like they're not, like they're going to move on. Like they'll be fine if you send them the inside ghost text.
Like people who have a healthy psyche and a well-integrated psyche, will they have a reaction? Sure. Most people don't like rejection, but if it's how it's couched, if you lead them on and ghost them and don't treat them like you would want to be treated, in that sense of like, how would I want to be let down if I just went on a date that didn't go well? Okay, I'll try that out. It doesn't mean it's a guarantee, but it's probably better than just avoiding it entirely. I can tell you that doesn't have a high success rate.
Yeah. So why is being assertive so hard? Because I know a lot of people are like, being assertive, I don't want to be mean. I don't want to sound selfish. Like
a lot of people do not currently possess the courage to be disliked. And that is a necessary virtue, I would say, to work on, because it does affect everything in our life. If we're constantly worried about other people liking us and us fitting in, we will not be our genuine, authentic selves, maybe only with a few people who we've like verified that they can accept our true self. But we're doing the world a disservice if we don't bother to explore who we really are and share who we really are. And that's not to say just, no holds barred, be whoever you want and be as rude as you want. It's not that. Being assertive is often misconstrued with being aggressive or being mean. And of course, even people who are like going from passive to, they go from like passive to passive aggressive. I'm like, no, we're like Goldilocks. And then I call them like, we'll get it just right in a second. Then they go from passive to aggressive. And I'm like, no, you have to go from passive. Most people I work with are passive. Then they get to assertive, which is sharing the needs and wants you have. And you know that you have when you're passive. You just don't have the words for it yet, but not in a mean way that pushes other people away and confirms, see, nobody's ever going to give me what I want. That's too aggressive. So it's the wording of it is difficult because we're not taught it or modeled. And there's also a lot of cultural and social conditions put on. If a woman is assertive, we get called the B word. If a man is assertive, it's normal. So there's a lot of gender conditioning and social conditioning that normalizes or stigmatizes that trait being expressed by certain individuals, ages, genders, races, etc. It gets construed differently. So knowing that might already be a limitation, and you probably weren't modeled it, because the archetype of parents back in the day was the type 2 overextended helper giver mom stump at the end of the giving tree, and the type 5 hyperlogical dad who only stepped in when the kids were giving the mom grief and he wanted his peace and quiet. Like very stereotypical there. But that didn't bode well for how to be assertive. It taught you how to be quiet and how to be pleasing.
Right. I mean, yeah. Growing up, I was disliked. I chose the path of being disliked. But at this point, as an adult, it translated to at least having decent boundaries and not being, I mean, I don't like letting my family down when I say I'm not coming to Thanksgiving, I'm not doing something, but I know that they'll get over it.
And they'll survive. I think so many people fear like this is going to be my or their undoing. Not necessarily the case. And if it is that a relationship really that could have been sustained? Like you have to sacrifice your authentic self the rest of your life to keep it?
Probably exactly. No, like there was I think when I was like 22 or 23 out of college, my parents are split. So there was some miscommunication about Thanksgiving. My dad invited me and then I was like, actually, I'm going to be at my mom's this year. And then he never invited me again. So like, it's like, okay, that's,
that is your choice.
Yeah. Like, okay. Like, that's how you want to play it. Like, I wasn't going to please my way and make my life like hell just to get the invite every year to Thanksgiving.
It's like walking on eggshells.
Yeah. And I just don't want to do that. And, my dad and I have like a very different relationship now. Like, but it's one that works. Like, it's one where I don't feel like I'm bending over backwards. I'm like abandoning myself or anything. So even though it's like kind of weird, it works for both of us. So
that's all we can hope for. Yeah.
Okay. So what we talked about ghosting and like kind of sharing, like rejecting someone as a form of assertiveness, but what's another example of assertiveness in early dating that someone could try?
Yeah. So I would say true assertiveness in early dating is checking in with yourself on the date. And this goes back to also, I wouldn't say it's like gender norms. It's more just like evolutionary psychology and how we function differently. So a lot of the women I've talked to, like he talked about himself the whole time. And I'm like, well, did he share anything interesting? Because biologically and evolutionarily, men try to share their greatest accomplishments as a way to impress a woman, but they tune out the fact that they're talking the whole time.
Yep.
Like they're like, but I told her all these great things. I'm like, did she get a word in? And he's like, crap, I should redo this. So they don't understand the like secondary loss of that. They get the gain, but they don't get the loss. And then the woman's like, well, I wanted to talk about myself. And none of that's like narcissistic. I mean, in a way, not the diagnosis, but like we all have that ego of like, I would like to put my best foot forward. But if there's not enough equal airtime, being able to assert yourself of like we do in any conversation where somebody's kind of going on, usually we use this minimal encouragement, like, right. And so that actually happened to me. And we take kind of the mic back. You could also share at a natural pause or if they're taking a bite. I'm curious if you want to learn, and it's a little snarky, but you can sample it. It's like, I'm curious if you would like to learn anything about me tonight, or do you want to use tonight's date for me to learn about you? And you can say it in a way that doesn't sound mean, but it can kind of trigger the person to be like, oh, and if the person's like, oh, I just want to talk about me, then you can make a decision of like, yeah, I was really hoping you'd kind of pick up on that. Or they'd be like, oh, you're right, I've just been going on about myself. And sometimes people do that when they're so impressed. Like when we're goo goo gaga over a person, there's no filter. We're just like me. So we keep giving information in hopes of being liked, not realizing the other person doesn't have a chance to do the same thing.
Right.
So being assertive is almost being like inserting yourself in the conversation, interrupting a little bit. Once the person's done with their statement or they've paused, being more of an active participant, not just sitting there so the person fails a test they don't even know they're taking. Like that's being passive. That's or passive aggressive. That's not assertive.
Yeah, and then also silently like resenting them because they might not realize they're doing it. They might not be that. They might just be nervous or again trying to impress you. It's not like they don't care about you. It's just
but that's how many people internalize it is like, well, if they really liked me, they would. That's the downfall of dating.
Yeah,
nobody does something because if they liked you more, they would. Especially from men to women, they're on their path. And if they're spending time with you, there's all these other indicators that I teach the women I work with to look for. It's not to say put up with mistreatment by any means, but the level that you're expecting might not be something he can give at this time or phase of his life. Men have much different phases of their development than women do. And so knowing what phase each of you are in is really helpful for the dating journey, because if he's in the fun and adventure part and you're looking for somebody who's like in the marriage and kids part, he's not a bad person. He just doesn't match up with what you want.
Right.
Yeah. Don't make him the demon. Go find somebody who's a better match. They might be older. They might have already had a child. Like that's where compromise comes in of like, in order to get most of what you want, you might have to flex what you're hoping for or your ideal image of someone you're dating.
Yeah. I mean, I love that. I just love that, like, and this kind of ties perfectly into abundance. It's like there is someone out there who is going to want the same things as you. And yes, you might have to compromise on some things, but they're out there. So let's talk about abundance. What are some key steps to cultivating an abundance mentality?
The first step I recommend to the people I work with, and even like talking about it on social media, is to tune in with how skilled are you at receiving. So it's not how good you are at giving or how much you can give. Most people have proven that. How are you when it comes to receiving? And how are you also, if we're looking at monetary abundance, what is your reaction when you get a raise at work, but it's not as high as you thought? What's your reaction when you get a random check in the mail? Like I think it was from like the California tax rebate, something. I don't know. This was like from years ago. And I finally got the letter. And I got a card in the mail, and I think it was for like $250. And my gut reaction was like, that was kind of a big tax. I thought it would be more. And then I'm like, no, tune back in. That was $250 I didn't expect to get. That's great. So it's even I work on that now. And I've done a lot of work on abundance mindset and business coaching and money coaching. It's really about tuning into how that frequency of receiving and what is your relationship like with whatever you want to receive more of, whether that's money, love, what have you. You can't say you want more love, but every time my kind of catchphrase I talked about on other podcasts is like, you can't date men if you hate men. You can't date women if you hate women. Like you can't talk about it like, oh, I want to be in love and have kids, but men are trash and garbage human beings that I'm like, it's like, well, no one would want to enter your life if that's how you talk. I
agree. Yes.
With money, right? It's like, you're never there for me. You're never enough. Why aren't you there when I need you? Money, if it were a being, is going to be like, yeah, I'm not going to show up. Versus if you're like, you're always just enough. And I'd love to have even more of you. If I'm able to get more of you, here's what I would put you towards. Like talking about it like it's a real person can actually fine tune that frequency of receiving. So again, money, if it were a being, is like wants to be around you. And because you're more receptive, you can now see all the ways that you could get it. Maybe somebody's been DMing you, hey, we have this collaboration, and they don't mention money at first. And you're like, oh, they didn't mention money. But if you message them, they're like, it's actually $10,000. You'd be like,
right.
Oh, heck yeah, right? Like, don't get so caught up in the beginning on what you think something is.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think, yes, I like how you're framing the abundance mentality, which is like, there are opportunities everywhere. It is just a matter of like fine tuning your frequency or your radar for it and just keeping your eye out for it and being receptive. I mean, being receptive is hard. I still have to work on this. Like my relationship specifically, where I'm so used to just doing everything and taking care of everything and managing the emotions and managing every little bit that like receiving, like having my fiance like cook a meal for me is mind-blowingly difficult. But I love it. But also like I love when he does that, even though he's like, what's the big deal? You know? He's like, of course I'm going to cook for you.
But it puts us, I'm similar to you in that sense. It's something I've worked on in a lot of my own therapy. It puts us, this might be of help to you, but it puts us so close to our fears of dependency and of needing another and not being needed. Because if we became indispensable in other areas by being needed, then that safeguarded us against abandonment or fearing of dependence. And if we look at it of like, oh, I could depend and rely on this person. That doesn't mean you're dependent or reliant on them, but you could depend or rely on them. That puts us in a fear position because maybe in childhood, it always goes back to this, we tried to rely on our parent or we thought they'd be there for us and they weren't. Our little brain goes, well, I can't depend on anybody. I just have to do it all myself.
Right.
You mix that with getting self-worth or praise if we do it all. You were the best kid. You always did your homework. I always got that. You always did your homework in the carpool line before you got home. I really wanted more free time, but I'm not going to not take a compliment, right? Like it starts when we're so young that we're just like, yes, more like, how can I please others? How can I be seen as this good person that receiving? Even when my couples therapist, like receiving, I would be like, oh, like,
yeah, it's like a, oh yeah, no.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
So what is your advice for the dater who, I'm sure you work with a lot of daters like this, who struggle with abundance because they've been actively dating for so long and they keep getting rejected. Maybe they're in their mid 30s and feel like they're running out of time. You know, how it's like the universe is basically being like, you're not going to, like, you can't get into this next step of relationship. Yeah. That's the message they're kind of taking from it. So how can they switch?
I would say if you find yourself hitting that wall or ceiling, depending on what kind of visual learner you are or your dating journey, if you think it can only go upward, which is a good mindset to adopt, PS, that shake up where you're like, what pools are you fishing in, so to speak? Because if it's only on apps or if it's only in person or you're only relying on like loose ties where you're telling people like, hey, I'm available to date, cast a wider net with more intention. So yes, tell people that you're looking to date. Be on the apps. It's kind of like having a job application on LinkedIn passively. Check it, but don't be so obsessed. It's the same thing. Right. If you did go on a job interview and you're like, I need this job to live, the recruiter be like, and that is the end of our interview because that's intense. Like rein it in.
Yeah.
You want to have multiple nets cast in different ponds. And in the meantime, not be so focused on why aren't others picking me. Truly go live your life. Go have an experience where you're hanging out with friends. Take the pressure off. My only worth is if I find a partner or have kids by X age. That's not doing anyone any favors. It's not a bad goal to have or a desire. Don't get me wrong. But if that's all encompassing and all consuming, you actually are blocking yourself from receiving probably that very thing because you're so hell-bent on it has to be this, 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 and this. And 5 other opportunities have presented themselves to you. And you're like, no, it's not this. But if you opened your mind and had your, nets in more pools, you could be like, oh, that guy from softball actually does have that sense of humor I like. Maybe I'll go out with him, or that girl from whatever class actually has that. Like, be more open-minded. It doesn't mean have no standards. Be more open-minded that other people who may not initially fit what you're looking for might actually be a good fit for you.
Yes. I mean, so well put. I mean, yes, I like this practical advice. It's not just like tuning into the frequency of the universe for abundance. It's literally casting a wider net. It's like creating, you can create this abundance by broadening your horizons. Yeah. So why does scarcity serve us so much? Because we easily slip into scarcity mode. Like, what is it actually doing for us emotionally?
I think slipping into a scarcity mindset or not being intentional about staying out of a scarcity mindset, either way you slice it, serves us because for some, it confirms limiting beliefs we've held all along. It confirms family narratives. So it can feel like a family betrayal or a dishonor to a family system if we make more money than any of the generations previously, or we were the first ones to maybe get divorced, or we were the first ones to not get divorced. Like, there's so many firsts that people block themselves from being like okay with because they put themselves sometimes in a scarcity mindset. Even if you're just looking at dating, less of the really heady beliefs, but the dating is like, well, I'll never be good enough for somebody who's whatever, a lawyer. So you never even try. You have no evidence. Like, you have no confirmatory proof that is indeed true. You're arbitrarily, based on whatever message, believing that. Or somebody told you, you'll never amount to anything, or there's no fish left in the sea. Where are you fishing? Like, if you're fishing in a high salt lake, then yeah, there's probably not going to be fish. Go to the freshwater. Like, you have to change where you're looking, and you have to change why you think scarcity is a benefit to you. And most people haven't ever examined that. They're like, oh, it actually isn't. Okay, then why do you have that belief? I never thought never thought not to, never thought I couldn't. And I thought this was all I was good for, because either I was told that or I internalized that because no one ever told me I was meant for more. So sometimes it's not the message we receive directly, it's the indirect message that we actually needed to receive that we never did.
Yeah. I mean, it just goes to show how powerful the stories we tell ourselves are, even the ones that we don't even know we're actively telling ourselves, just like, it's like our own plot line in the drama of our lives. Like if it was like a TV show that we don't even know we're on. Yeah. What if someone is listening to this and they're like, I am casting a writer net. I am living my life, and it's still not happening. What the hell, Talia?
I tell people to take at minimum 3, you can take as long as you want, but at least 3 months off of dating.
Okay.
Like, keep the apps out there. If you can do like a full cleanse, or you can just take a break, because it's like working on a project for work or an equation or something, and you're just like going at it. The more you look at it, the less sense it's going to make. The more you try to fine tune this and change the picture.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Taking yourself out of the purpose. If your purpose of dating is to be on the apps, then don't do what I'm telling you. If your purpose of dating is to find somebody to eventually self-select and get off the apps, or just meet in person and not be in the dating pool anymore, like you're out, you're toweled off, you want to be dry forever, then what you need to do is take a break and get back to connecting with yourself. What do I like? What are my hobbies? What are my interests?
Right. It's like filling your cup back up with the things. Yes.
Date is the one. You're going to miss all those times where you could walk around pantsless in your apartment, listening to whatever music you want, eating Thai food till 4 a.m. Like you're never going to have your own life again. And I'm not saying that to be pessimistic. It's a joyous thing that you get to share in partnership and fellowship. In the meantime, enjoy every ounce of your own individual personal freedom that you have, where you're not attuned to somebody else's needs. You're not beholden to them because you haven't made that agreement yet. So soak it for, like, squeeze it for all it's got when you're independent, and then go back into the dating pool fresh and ready to be like, all right, let's try this again. Like,
yes.
I shake it off. I'm in a new season.
And hopefully really you can find someone who you can, where you can walk around 4 a.m. with your pants off eating Thai food. I mean, yesterday, literally, I was like at 4 p.m. in my kitchen with my shirt off eating crackers. And my fiance walked in. He was like, "What are you snacking on?"
Right?
You know,
no judgment. He's like, "Oh, can I have one?" You're like, "Sure."
Yes. So he's fully on board with my weird snacking habits. Well, this has been so great. I guess I'll love to wrap it up with this question. What do you want to see more of in dating culture?
Ooh, I would like to see more people read books about their self and the attachment styles. Like, before turning to the internet for all of your advice, there are sound books and like YouTube channels from therapists or trained professionals like dating coach who like want to give you data that works for their clients, but people want that not get rich quick, but like get
the quick fix, the silver bullet, the like, yeah.
No, it's not going to happen in a 90-second reel. Do you know how long analysis? People can be in psychoanalysis for 20 years. I'm not saying it's going to take that long, but no one's a magician in this case. We're not like the David Blaine of relationships, where it's like, all you have to look over here and there's your partner. And we're like, oh my gosh, how did I not see them before? Like, that's a delusion. A delusion is a falsely held belief with no proof or evidence of truth. A lot of people are delusional about what they think how easy it should be or how hard it needs to be. Like, there's so many delusions that need to be dispelled in dating culture. I'd like to see people also be more grace giving to others. So like people who learned about attachment, they're like, avoidance are the demons and anxious one. It's
oh
like,
my God.
Okay,
Talia, literally every expert who comes on here says like grace or empathy. I'm telling you, like, this is something people universally agree on.
Yeah. That you need to have more of it, because you're good and bad. They're good and bad. If you can't own your good and bad parts, you're going to be very quick to cast the other person in that bad object position, is what we call it. And you're not going to move past it. Well, all the avoidance I've ever dated, I'm going to stop you right there. Why do you only go for avoidance? Well, no, I'm like, no, we're not talking about them. We're talking about you.
Yeah.
What is going on with you?
You can control other people.
Yeah, you can. And that's most people's deepest frustration, is like, well, I want it to be the way I want. It's like a petulant child. I want it to be the way I want it, and I want no other wiggle room, and you'll do exactly as I say. Ugh, like, that's not going to yield good results. So I'd like to see people educate themselves before going on social media. Still go on it because it's helpful to, and commiserate, right? There's very funny reels and memes out there of like, oh, I look at that too and I'm like, oh gosh, like that was hilarious when that happened to me.
Yeah,
too.
like super relatable stuff. Totally. So
great.
What books, what's your favorite book for people to get started with?
I know it catches a lot of heat, but for basic beginner intro, I give the caveat it is biased against avoidance. And Amir Levine himself even said in an interview years later, if I could go back and write it again, I would be more equitable, but he was going through his own stuff at the time. Attached is a great book. How to Get the Love You Want by the Hendricks couple. Why We Love by Helen Fisher. And I'm trying to think if there's another one I would recommend. The Courage to Be Disliked. I'm going to butcher his name. It's in Japanese.
Okay.
But if you
I'll link it in the show notes.
Those are my top 4 books that I recommend
cool.
people start with.
I don't think I read the last 2, but I agree with Attached. I think it's a really good starting point, but then like go read other books about attachment.
Power of Attachment is a good one. That's, I think, also by Helen Fisher. Yeah. Educate yourself and make your own decisions.
Love it. Well, thank you so much, Talia. Where can we get more of you? Where can we find you? I know we said it in the beginning, but let's say it again.
Yeah. So I'm on Instagram. I'm also on TikTok, but I'm old. I mastered Instagram and I'm like, I like being good at this one thing. I'm not even going to look at TikTok. I have my media person help me with that when I still had her. So at Talia Bombola across all platforms. I have 3 podcasts myself because apparently I can never rest. So I have Heal Through Humor, Between Two Clinicians, and the Couples Guide podcast for those of you who want like more of how my brain works, but mostly I'm on Instagram.
Awesome. Well, I'll link all that in the show notes. Thank you so much for this incredibly insightful conversation. This is just like everything you said is like, I had like several aha moments in this conversation. So thank you.
Love it. Of course.
I want to thank you for listening. Thank you for trusting me. I hope this conversation helped you reframe assertiveness and showed you a path to building self-confidence. Don't forget, you are doing great. I'd love it if you shared this episode with someone who is navigating dating and might need a little confidence boost or some tough love. If any of these episodes have helped you in your journey, you can help me by leaving a stunning review on Apple or giving Dating Intentionally 5 stars on Spotify. I'd really appreciate it. Once again, I'm Talia. This has been Dating Intentionally, and I'll catch you next time.